Hello, this is Wu Jun's letter from Silicon Valley Season 3. Yesterday I talked to you about the economic development of Silicon Valley. Today this letter, I want to talk to you about the social state of Silicon Valley, first from the perspective of civil society, and you observe the current situation of Silicon Valley, and then also want to introduce you to a book, historian Niall Ferguson's Great Degeneration. This book has a very deep analysis of the social problems of the United States, but also help us to see clearly the future of Silicon Valley. Yesterday we talked about the prosperity of Silicon Valley in the past. This prosperity comes ultimately from the gathering of talent, because capital will follow people. Technology is also created by people. People are willing to go to Silicon Valley, not only because there is money and good environment. More important reason is the human and social environment. In my opinion, the human and social environment of Silicon Valley can actually use a word often seen today to describe civil society. The word civil society comes from the writings of Scottish Enlightenment thinker Adam Ferguson. This Ferguson and the previous Ferguson is not the same person. Civil society in the word civil from the civic, meaning citizens of civil society, in fact, is the citizens of their own control, and the Silicon Valley region is very consistent with the description of Ferguson's book. The external manifestations of civil society are these: economic prosperity, political freedom, cultural prosperity. Silicon Valley basically did this in the past. Of course, I used the word in the past, that today's Silicon Valley may have problems. In the back I will talk to you specifically about what kind of problems, said the external manifestations. So what is the deeper qualities of civil society? I think point 1 is the ability to keep yourself in check. Well, although California has been under democratic rule for a long time in the past 20 years, more and more like the Nordic welfare state, but Silicon Valley is still a small government and big society management model. Silicon Valley is not a borough, nor is it a geographical concept, but just an agreed-upon term. The core area of Silicon Valley has two counties, Santa Clara and San Mateo. The two circles are then divided into three small cities. The size of each city? The answer is no, because Apple and Google actually do not need to pay sales tax to the local government. Where their sales occur, sales tax will be given to you. For example, the Apple phone sold in New York, part of the profit is given to New York, and Apple's headquarters location is not related to the city of Cupertino, and Mountain View can receive from Apple and Google, the two companies, is a small amount of property tax, and because the two companies purchased property very early, when the land price is very low, they have to pay the property tax per unit area than other residents and companies are much lower. Cupertino is the last mayor. Mr. Zhang Zhaofu is a friend of mine. He's most proud of his political achievements is to collect about $1 million more in property taxes from Apple every year. You know, Apple's annual revenue is more than $200 billion. No money. These small cities, the government can manage few things naturally. They usually only care about three things: run school district, care for the welfare of the elderly and groups in need of care, as well as when you want to remodel the house or to build a store, responsible for approving the construction plan. Of course, the community to run a lot of public things always need people to do, will have to be given to the private sector, from the supply of water, electricity and gas to garbage removal or so, if you want to improve school conditions, for private schools, anyway, the government. What are the benefits of running a society like this without funding, mainly by donations from parents and alumni, and for public schools mainly by issuing bonds, which are then repaid by property taxes? Simply put, no one cares about your freedom, as long as you do not infringe on others. You love to do what you do every day. Do not underestimate this freedom, to let people put their minds on creating new technologies, this freedom. It is a very important premise. So what is the downside of such a way of operation? It, or no one to manage. UNA not urgent. You have a what difficulties? There is no place to find the government, or even encounter bandits to find. The police usually the police can only register no police force to solve the case. So what can we do about it? Actually nothing can be done. In the United States there is a tradition of grassroots self-government. Many communities will organize themselves to solve their own Environmental problems, anyway, summed up in one sentence, their own problems to solve their own, so it can be seen that freedom has a price, because no government can rely on civil society, does not mean that society is in a state of disorder, but we have to work together and the law to adjust the relationship between people and people, to solve each other's conflicts, so that we can live in harmony, to focus on doing things. People themselves are selfish, want to struggle, it is inevitable to compete, there will be competition, there will be conflicts, so the Silicon Valley region is very common legal disputes, large to large companies can easily billions of lawsuits between the lawsuit, small to the couple divorce or a few $1,000s of rent disputes, we all build in court to find arbitration, so lawyers are a big occupation in the Silicon Valley region, in the heart of Silicon Valley Palua. It is generally believed that politics, economics, law and community are the four pillars of modern society in Europe and the United States, and in Silicon Valley, politics is almost blank, but economics, law and community are very strong. Downplayed a lot of conflicts, especially those that may arise due to differences in the social division of labor, because you see, in such a society where everything has to be solved by themselves, each person will have to beg for others, even if the other is a gardener or a plumber, we have to live in peace with each other. Although there are many high-tech companies in the Silicon Valley region, in fact, really engaged. Substitute industry only accounts for about 1/4 of the workforce, so what do the rest of the people do? Is a variety of service companies, from banks, real estate, education, energy, retail, to home gardening and so on. When the economic situation is good, everyone has a job, each other can get along well, although the police are not too many, but the crime rate is not too high. This is also a characteristic of civil society, but if not, due to everyone has something to do or a part of him just do not want to do things, so loose social structure will soon be crime and welfare baggage to crush. But the fortunate thing about Silicon Valley is that it has no history of slavery, so there is no racial issues this big baggage. But the Silicon Valley region and the rest of the United States, there are poor people also have relatively disadvantaged. Some ethnic groups are mainly Hispanic residents. There are also many young people who have been smuggled in from Mexico, but the fortunate thing about Silicon Valley is that even these people want to find work and earn money through work, rather than eating welfare and asking for political rights at the same time, and those who have been smuggled in have ventured to Silicon Valley because there are jobs here, and although those jobs are only $10 an hour for manual labor, they are better than earning $2 an hour in their home countries. $2 an hour is much better. On the one hand, they sympathize with these people because most of them come to Silicon Valley from all over the US or even from all over the world to look for gold, except for the difference in income. Essentially, there is no difference with those who work part-time, and those high-income groups also need those low-income workers to do a lot of manual labor. On the other hand, the influx of these people led to an increase in crime and even changed the living environment and atmosphere of the city, but in general, because of empathy, we are currently able to live together peacefully, but the rest of the United States is not so lucky. The summer of 2020 across the United States, disgruntled crowds took to the streets to create riots, so that the epidemic had been controlled again. And the epidemic has doubled in intensity, yet with so many disgruntled people, it is clear that they cannot simply be blamed, but need to find the cause. Many attribute it to racial issues in the US, which is of course the direct cause, while one side of the opposing sides feels that they are in a low economic position and need more political benefits and rights, while the other side feels that the other side is eating welfare without working for it. Behind this, there are deeper reasons. Historian Niall Ferguson in The Great Degradation of the book has a very deep analysis of this. Niall Ferguson believes that the relationship between people and society is like a bee and hive. When a hive has a large number of value-creating worker bees inside the hive will become larger. Of course, worker bees also need to feed those who cannot be self-sufficient males, which is similar to the concept of the Western welfare state, usually. The number of non-working bear peaks in a storm is always a minority, but when the welfare of the state creates more and more males, the situation changes. The democratic system of one person, one vote may seem the fairest, but if the result of the vote is to raise more males and take more honey from the worker bees, this is bad, and the result is that the bees in the hive begin to crib. in Western society is in the form of public debt, using the money of future generations to support their own finances, so Niels Ferguson believes that according to this model to proceed, Western society is bound to degenerate. Niels Ferguson this degeneration into the alienation of civil society, that is to say a civil society that originally pursued equality turned itself into a non-civil society, the specific embodiment. Now politicians in order to get the poor votes, and bottomless promises, the welfare legal system alienated into a lawyer, the rights of the individual is not protected community into a neighborhood full of crime, etc. To sum up, democracy, freedom, the market rule of law and citizen autonomy to support the four pillars of Western society are going to collapse, from the global economic development. The pace of the shift from the West to emerging economies like China is alarming, so Niels Ferguson asserts that the dominance of the West will end in our lifetimes, and the left in the United States is not convinced by Niels Ferguson's view. But what does the future hold for Silicon Valley, where I live and which is still one of the few clean slates for civil society in the United States? That's a topic for the next letter, and I'll see you in the next one.